What's up everybody, we're back with another raid guide, and today we're taking a look at the Jadefire Masters encounter on Mythic difficulty. This encounter is the same for the Horde and the Alliance, they just have different animations. The rooms look a bit different and the Alliance gets a really annoying pillar in their room. However, everything else works the same. So I'll be going over most of the mechanics, how to deal with them, and our overall tactic for this fight. If you're watching this, I'll assume you're familiar with the heroic mechanics. If not, feel free to check out my heroic Battle of Dazar'Alor guides. So for this encounter you want 2 tanks, 4 or 5 healers, and a healthy mix of ranged and melee DPS. The overall mechanics of the fight haven't changed all that much, it's just scaled up significantly. So let's start off with what is new during phase 1. And phase 1 is the fight when it's not in intermission. First of all, the old tank mechanic multi-sided strike now targets everyone in the raid except a tank and a healer. It's a random healer and the tank without aggro on the monk. The players that gets thrown up will see a grid around them with 6 circles. 5 images will spawn one at a time inside these circles. They will charge at you in the order they spawn. This is also indicated by the circle lighting up a bit, so if you didn't memorize their spawn order, just be fast to face the image that lights up a bit. If you fail to face one of the images, you will take a stupidly large amount of damage. However, if you succeed, you get successful defense, which increases damage and healing done by 5% in this stacks. You get 1 per image you face correctly, so 25% if you do all of them correctly. And Spirit of Xuan now summons 2 adds instead of 1, and again they deal a lot more damage than on heroic. And the Pyroblast that the mage use will one-shot its target if you fail to interrupt it. And during the first intermission you get 3 living bombs with more HP, the explosion deals far more damage, and the beam is still very bad to stand in. During the second intermission there's been a few changes as well. First of all, there's no weak point in the barrier. Instead you now have to bring at least 1 force orb over in order to DPS it. On top of this, you are also chased by the Spirit of Nisao. He pursues players through the maze. The spirit leaves images that continually trample players. Pretty much if he catches up with you, you are going to die. So, as I said, not that much new, but definitely scaled up. So on that note, how do we deal with all of this? First of all, tanks, you want to keep the monk and the mage stacked as much as possible throughout the fight. They will teleport and jump around, but just try to always have them stacked. In phase 1, tank swap at around 5 or 8 stacks, unless one of you has got the tested debuff from the multi-strike. If that's the case, then the tested tank keeps the mage until that debuff expires. Of course you can still swap before that, but you will take a lot more damage. And it's always the tank with aggro on the monk that goes up into the multi-sided strike minigame, so if you want to, you can always have the same tank go up there. All DPS should focus the monk at all time, only swap targets when there's adds or the mage is casting Pyroblast. When the mage uses Pyro, make sure to nuke down the shield and interrupt it, or one of your tanks will go bye-bye. Range DPS, try and stay loosely stacked, close enough for AoE heals and master spells, but far apart enough to see if a magma trap spawns under you. And always move with the bosses. If the mage jumps away, get the monk to the mage and the raid follows. You want to assign 1 high mobility melee class to always jump after the monk when she uses World Jade Storm in order to interrupt it. I recommend a warrior or a demon hunter for this. Have a few players assigned to the magma traps so you can clear them as often as possible to minimize the risk of someone stepping on one. This is especially important if one of them spawns under a living bomb. Paladins can bubble clear him without getting knocked up, same with hunters and turtle, but you can also take him as, say, a warlock and use demonic circle, or a monk with transcendence. Just make sure they get cleared. When the spirits of Xuan spawns, you want everyone to swap 2 of them, stun them and nuke them down. You can use things like Ring of Peace to keep them away from players, and whoever gets fixated by the Xuans should move a bit from the raid. And healers, keep an eye out for the embers and make sure they are dispelled. Roughly 30 seconds into the fight, you will get your first multi-sided strike. Ideally, everyone succeed 5 times so they all get the 25% damage and healing increase. It helps out a lot. During the multi-strike, 1 tank and 1 healer will AFK a bit with the mage boss. You want to pull the mage boss down to where the monk lands after multi-sided strike. It helps melee a bit, and the monk usually lands pretty close to where one of the living bombs spawn in the first intermission. Depending on your DPS, a few timings and overlaps can happen here with the first intermission. With high DPS, you can push the boss into the first intermission and get the first set of Xuan adds to spawn either when all the living bombs are dead or as you're nuking the last living bomb. On the other hand, with a little less DPS, you can get Xuans to spawn just as you get into the living bomb phase, which is not ideal. Not undoable, but not great. And with low DPS or no bloodlust on pull, you'll most likely get the Xuans to spawn a bit before the first intermission. If you get the adds to spawn just as you go into the living bomb phase, have everyone stack up on one of the bombs as usual, cleave him down with the boss and use lots of externals. The AoE from Xuan and the living bombs hurts when combined. You can also drop a Ring of Peace smack down on the living bomb you're stacking at to keep the Xuans out for a bit, and then you deal with them after the first ember. So for the actual intermission, as soon as the first intermission starts, have everyone in your raid stack up inside one of the living bombs. They always spawn at the same locations. Burn it down and move as a group to the next one until all 3 of them are down. Staying stacked helps healers with both dispelling and healing the raid. There's quite a lot of damage during this phase. When all 3 are down, phase 1 continues and you just deal with all the regular mechanics and push the boss into the second intermission. And during the maze intermission, you want to assign 3 or 4 players to pick up the force orbs. They spawn roughly on the same locations every time. It's a bonus if these are again high mobility classes that can cross the maze with ease, like demon hunters, warriors, monks, or paladins. These players want to get the force orbs as fast as possible, pick them up and click on one of the weak points in the barrier. The rest of the raid just needs to get to the barrier as fast as they can and start nuking it down. Every weak point shares HP, so with 4 up you can just AoE them down, which will make it go faster. And if you have warlocks, they can put up their gateways before the maze and you can use them to just teleport over the rings. Other than that, try to avoid standing in the big fiery swirls on the ground, and the Spirit of Nisa will chase after you, but there's really not much to do about it. Either you nuke down the barrier or he nukes you down. And this phase, as usual, ends when the barrier is down and you've engaged the boss again. At this point, it's really just about staying alive and nuking the monk as much as possible. With enough DPS, you will kill the monk before the final phase, which means you only have to deal with the mage during it. If not, then the monk should still be at very low HP if you've always focused her. Either way, when you get to the final phase, you want to again stay loosely stacked to help out healers, but be aware of the magma traps. And if the monk is alive, keep track of her frontal dragon's breath. It really does hurt. You can pretty much ignore magma traps at this point, just go all out on the boss or bosses. Keep moving bit by bit as the magma trap spawns, and healers be ready for ever increasing damage during this phase, both on the raid and on the tanks. The tank damage ramps up quite a bit during this phase. Other than that, we used bloodlust on pull in order to burn the monk as much as possible and to push them into the first intermission fast, so we got the Xuans by the end of it. I have seen guilds bloodlust during the first intermission or the first set of ads to kill them and then go into intermission. We tried that a bit but ended up with lusting on pull instead. It worked the best for us. And I think that pretty much covers this fight. If you have any questions at all, make sure to hit me up in the comments below. Don't forget to check out my Patreon if you'd like to support my work. And as always, if you like these kind of videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave me a like and ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching and I will see you next time.